Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. This is our first real episode in a long time, and it marks the start of a lot of new things for us. There's a really short episode we put out last week where Ram and I talk about what some of those new things are and what we've been up to while we were gone. So if you missed that, go back and listen so that you're caught up. This week, we're talking to a very well-known member of the circuit who has had a big hand in many high-profile competitions and successful performances. We're really excited for you to hear his perspective on his journey through the circuit thus far. As is the case with any of our dancer profiles, we can only hear and know our guest's perspective on the things that they've experienced, but we do know that there's more than one experience out there among our listeners of the same events, and we respect that too. As usual, you can find links to relevant material from today's episode in the show notes, so we encourage you to check those out and enjoy the conversation. Okay, so with that, Saab and Anil put the work into producing this one, so I am going to stop talking and hand it over to them.
Sorry, I'm just picturing this.
Right?
I'm picturing a horse on stage right. Like I'm telling you what I'm looking at. I'm thinking of a horse on stage right now, going crazy, and then the rest of the horse. Okay.
Right. So the mix is on. The Koda's on stage. Yeah, the Koda feels the hype. You know, as everyone's like SPD, and the Koda goes like, yeah, man, this is for me, and like the Koda goes crazy. You know, like
this is
the
Bhangra Podcast.
Hey everyone, my name is Saab Grover. Today we have a special one-on-one interview with none other than Prabh Saini of Shaan Punjab Dee. For our listeners who are new to Bhangra or unaware of the Bhangra community, Prabh is captain of Shaan Punjab Dee, otherwise known as SPD, a Bhangra team and academy based out of Brampton, Ontario, Canada. SPD is widely considered one of the most popular and successful Bhangra teams in the world. And in today's interview, you're going to hear directly from Prabh on the history of the team and what the trials and tribulations of success in the Bhangra community look like. Now, to understand the history of SPD, we started outside the Bhangra community and went straight to the Saini home. So, Prabh, I'm kind of going to start talking a little bit more about not the Bhangra side of everything, but more you as a person. So, we all know that you, Jagmeet, are captaining Shaan Punjab Dee together, but I want to know more about your family. So, for example, what do your parents do for work? Kind of when did they immigrate to the West? And I kind of remember your dad actually, Bhangra on the 6th, 2016, I remember your dad was singing there, I think, if I remember correctly. So tell me more about, like, what's your family life like?
You said, what did they do for work? So my dad is driving a truck. My mom was a lecturer in India. And then when she came here right now, she's working as a financial advisor. And you know how, even though I've told my parents to retire, but they still want to work. Especially my mom. I'm like, hey, mom, you can just sit at home and, you know, just sanu pyar karo, you know, just love us instead of like, you know, she picks up shifts from Amazon to some security shifts here and there. And then also like the financial side of it. She wants to work. She's very active. She's a yoga teacher as well. So she always wants to stay very active. And I guess that is where I always tell my team, I'm like, hey, you know, my mom didn't just tell me to do this, tell me to do that. And then I just listened to her. She was there to set an example for me. And I had a very good example in front of me. And that is why I am the way I am. I mean, I work as well 6 days in a week. And my team is like, Baji, how do you do this? And I'm like, this is exactly how I do this. I have a role model that I can look up to almost every day. And that's how it impacts my life. And yeah, on the other side too, Dad is a truck driver. So he's also a very working person. So yeah, I mean.
So that hustling lifestyle really comes from your parents.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, so you said you're also working 6 days a week. What do you do for work?
I started working with the Investigators Group Incorporate. They're a private company in Toronto. I started working there as a security guard. From security guard, went to a loss prevention officer, and then became an investigator. And now I work there as an investigator. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. So you're working 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Now, what influence has this all had on your Bhangra career? I mean, like you said, you're doing so much. So how's this work life influenced your Bhangra career?
I wish I could put more time towards Bhangra, and I wish I could put more time towards singing. But it is what it is. You have bills to pay. You have insurances to pay for. You have mortgages to take care of. So yeah, I guess work is work and Bhangra is Bhangra. But I really, when it comes to Bhangra, I feel like I have an obsession, not just passion. So I've scheduled my work according to Bhangra. So I don't know if that makes sense.
It actually makes complete sense. I know exactly where you're coming from. I know exactly where you're coming from.
So like a Saturday, Sunday would be 10 to 6. I mean, I told my workplace, I'm like, I cannot work after 6. So give me a shift that's like ending before 6 or 5. So they would always make sure that I'm like done work at 6 or after like 6, I'll be available.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. You were talking about, you mentioned Jagmeet or Meet, right? Both of you guys are phenomenal dancers, right? I want to talk more about, I think being brothers, in a circuit, being brothers on a team is very important, and it's probably had a great influence on you. So tell me more about that relationship that you had between you two that's really helped foster the environment that Shaan Punjab Dee is or has now.
Wow, that's a very good question. So the first competition that we ever went to was Untitled Punjabi. It was a local competition. It took place in a banquet hall. Meet was not a part of it. And when I was performing on stage, Meet was on the side, on the left side. I still remember he was sitting with Mom, and he was just jumping up and down, and he was supporting us like no tomorrow. And to have that kind of support, it meant a lot to me on stage. We did place first at that competition. We had some local teams compete there, but that was our first competition as well. So we were looking forward to more competitions. And the next competition, one of my teammates, he's like, you know what? Let's have Meet to cover a spot, and he's going to perform as well. And I'm like, no, he's too young yet. Where this is probably not the right time. But then we brought him in. He covered a spot. He started dancing. He started practicing. And then I think it only took me a day or two to make up my mind. I made up my mind after looking at him for a day or two that I'm going to be training him. I'm going to be spending time on him. And then it started from there. And our relationship after that, even before that too, it was always amazing. We have a difference of 7 years. He would always call me Paji. So, right? He would always call me Paji. And that's why, everyone else in the team as well, they call me Paji as well, right? And I guess that respect started from right there. They had Meet to look up to, and then Meet's first competition, actually, the first competition that Meet performed at was at Bhangra at the Falls, and that's where he got the Best Dancer award.
Okay.
And after that, it just started. I knew it that he's going to be my Jodi very soon. And our relationship has always gotten better after that. He gives me competitions. How do you know that?
Yeah. So, it's honestly, it's like, it's always good to have that Geordie where you're trying to
yes,
dance.
So for me to coach the team and also cover the difference of 7 years with my brother, with my Geordie is like,
yeah, your knees. Yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from, dude. The first competition that SPD competed at outside of Canada was Big Apple Bhangra 2014. Big Apple Bhangra was a Bhangra competition hosted in Queens, New York. It hasn't been held since 2016. I had the pleasure of being at that competition with Shaan Punjab Dee in 2014, and if you were there, you would not recognize them as the SPD we know today. And the preparation of that comp explains why you wouldn't recognize them. What was that comp prep like? Can we talk about that comp experience?
So that comp prep, okay, so we started practicing for Big Apple with 12 guys. From 12, we went to 10. From 10, we went to 8. And then from 8, we finally went to 6. And that same night, when we went to 6, when 2 guys said that we're not coming, I went to the academy, and then I had Sahaj Kahunia there, the red Jodi dancer from Big Apple, right beside Manny. He was crying. He had tears in his eyes. He's like, hey, man, we put our whole summer into it, and, now we're not going to the competition or what? Because we're 6 now, and the minimum to go to a competition is 8. I'm like, hey, guys, don't worry about it. We'll go, just give me some time. And then there was Meet, my brother, right? It was his first legitimate competition right after Bhangra at the Falls. And I was like, okay, you know what, Meet? We'll go for it. We'll go for it. I'll make some arrangements. So these guys that I started calling and, that used to help me out with gigs and all that, 2 of them came in, and then we were back to 8. And we only had, I think we had about 9 days before the competition. right? And we're like, well, guys, we'll make it happen. Like we we had 1 week. I would say 1 week, not even like 9 days. So we had 1 week, and then I'm like, okay, guys, we have to like take this set from a 10-man or 11-man to like 8-man, right? So change formations and all that. So it started from there, and then the coach was there too, and we ended up going to the competition with 8-man. So we just wanted to go to that competition and see how it feels to go to a competition like that, right? And just try it out.
And then when you got that feeling, did it? What happened after Big Apple? When we talked about that, there was like a kind of a shift.
Yeah.
Right?
So after Big Apple, I mean, so I had competed in India, and we went to nice levels, you know, nice universities, colleges, and you know, competed like that.
What team was that in India that you competed with?
So in 2014, when I went to India after a few years, I competed with Shiv Chand's team. So that's Joddeep Singh Sethi's team, the same team that won Bhangra in our first place, right? I competed with those guys. I performed with those guys. I mean, against other teams. So what were we talking about again?
So
Big Apple, right? Yeah,
Big
so,
Apple.
yeah.
Yeah, right after
So,
Big
yeah.
Apple.
We performed, and then I got a lot of love. Apparently, like the Blue Jodi, Meet and I, we received a lot of love. Especially one of your guys, G Sims. G Sims, we met up at the after party, and he was just sitting with me. He was just like, "Man, you guys were good. You know, I want to see more of you guys." Like he appreciated us like anything, and with all that love, I really wanted to do big too. You know. Like, I didn't know the culture of competitions here. I didn't know it at that point, right? We were just going because someone was taking us there, and we decided that as a team we'll go there and we'll experience how it feels like, and losing never feels good, especially when you're, you know, when you want to win, right?
Yeah.
So that's where it started from, and right when we came back, the team, some guys from the team, they're like, I mean, Sahaj was the main guy at that time. He was leading. He's like, hey, I would want, you know, Prabh to be the coach of the team, if anything. And then other guys also, you know, pointed it in, and then they're like, hey, if Prabh can run the team, it's good, we're staying. If not, then we're out. And at that point, the coach that was there at that point, he also said that he's like, I'm not into competitions anymore, so I would like to take off. So that's when I was appointed as the coach of Shaan Punjab Dee, and I decided that every single competition that SPDS went to, and they'd lost there, I'm going to make sure I go to every single of that competition and win. And go for a win, I mean, you know. And Big Apple, out of all those competitions, is the only competition that's left that we haven't been
So
to.
let's talk to the Versa guys to make sure it happens again.
Yep.
Yeah, they gotta run that comp. I think it's been a really long time since they ran it. Been quite a few years.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. So when I hear that story, I kind of hear a very similar story to how a lot of people get very involved in the Bhangra community. They go to one competition. They maybe lose at that competition, don't perform as they want to, and then they get like super addicted to the environment.
Yeah.
And they just want to just keep going into it.
Yeah.
Now you started having that kind of like you always had the passion for Bhangra, but now you have this want to bring SPD and to all these comps and win everything that they've lost in the past.
Yeah, I think more likely it was like the feelings that were connected with me. You know, like Meet was hoping that my brother would take us to a competition. He would train us, you know.
Yeah.
Sahaj was like, yes, man, I feel like we could do better. All right. So there were hopes and there were dreams that were connected. And I mean, that was something that was fueling me 24/7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. And so that kind of that fuel took you into Windy City 2015.
Oh, yeah.
So Windy City, you were going up against probably, you know, some big competition from Toronto.
Yeah.
I think the placing teams were SGPD, you, SPD, and then Extreme, which all three are Toronto teams, all from the same city.
Yep.
But yeah, so Windy City now, the performance is on a different level than what was happening at Big Apple. And even like the style of set, the choreography, everything was so different.
Yeah.
You know, in really a year's time frame. So talk about that, like prep. What was that key differentiator that like helped you out to have that prep, and what was that comp experience and prep like?
After Big Apple, I knew exactly what we needed to do to perform on a stage, and you know, actually get appreciated by people, right? And not just after Big Apple. I mean, I had experience from before too, so I just wanted to put that in. You know, tell my guys exactly how I want to do it. You know, practice and just give it time. Anything you give time to, you could make it work. Like once you have a vision, you have to put time in it, and that's how you'll get what you want from it, you know. So I started looking for guys. I made a couple posts, said, hey, we're looking for guys. I made a few phone calls. I also had my guys calling people that were interested in doing Bhangra, right? So we brought a bunch of people in, made selections, and as soon as I had the right guys to do it, I mean, SPD, let me tell you this, SPD has been very picky, right, with people, especially when we're taking those people to competitions, right? We're being like, I get very picky, like banda nasha nahi kar sakda koi, you know, and things like that, man, like, you know. So jo dekari team finals.
So pretty much nobody on SPD drinks. Is that what you're saying?
No, of course. Like I cannot control people to a point where.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's kind of like it's like team image, right?
Yeah, like practice.
Because like that person,
nobody
like
with addictions of drugs. Let me put it that way. Nobody that is addicted to drugs, you know, can go to competitions. And if they're going to competitions with me, they have to leave it for that point of time, right? ਨਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪ੍ਰੈਕਟਿਸ ਤੇ ਨਸ਼ਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਆ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਤੇ ਨਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪ੍ਰੈਕਟਿਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਨਸ਼ਾ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ because I have a diet in place that you're going to be taking, that you're going to be on for those good 4 months, 3 months that we practice, right? So a lot of guys for that reason have appreciated me too, because I didn't always get the good apples. But anyways, yeah, so I had a vision, and I'm like, hey, these are the guys that I'm going to be going to the competition with. They I mean, we started practicing. It took us 4 months. And vision was different from before. Form was different. Practice timings, sessions were different. Coach was different. You know, the team had this heat in them that I didn't see before. Their energy was being channelized. It was being directed into the right way. So, I mean, Windy City was an eye-opening performance for not just you, but for other people and myself as well. You know, seeing the team perform. You can practice, but then when a team puts a Vardi on and the way they perform on stage, it's always phenomenal. It's always a level up, right? So when I saw them perform on stage like that, I was like, yeah, you know what? My guys will do it, and they can do it. We were okay with the second place, but then right after that, in a month, I mean, SGPD won first place there, right? At Windy City?
Yeah.
And in a month, we had a competition with SGPD again, right? And that is when we placed first with a completely different set. Like, in just 1 month, we changed our whole routine, you know. And
that's the competition that happened after Windy City was Chakte Bhangra.
It was Chakte Bhangra, yes, sir.
Chakte Bhangra. So I think that's the one where the video like starts, it's like pointing in the sky. If anyone ever finds it, and it goes down.
Yeah.
And then you see you guys on stage. That's how I remember.
Yes.
And then was Falls anything different about that preparation? Very similar prop. What was that Falls prep? Because there you guys also got first. I watched that one.
Yeah.
I watched that one live. Yeah. That was kind of fun. That was fun.
I think the time frame that we had in between was 2 months and a half. So I don't know. I'm not too sure, but 2 months and a half. And a completely different set again. Yeah.
A completely different set, same approach, right?
Yeah.
2016 Motor City Bhangra, the competition that put SPD on the map globally. A little bit of background, Motor City Bhangra competition is held in the Metro Detroit area, my home. It is typical of this competition to have both a live Bhangra competition and a music Bhangra competition. So live is where they're dancing to a live band. The dancers are dancing to a live band. And music Bhangra is where they're dancing to a pre-recorded mix. So SPD, after going on a streak of multiple first places at local Canada competitions and also placing second at Windy City Bhangra, was looking for a new challenge. For a whole year, they didn't compete. 2015 all the way to 2016. Little did we know at that time that break was a build-up to something legendary. At Motor City Bhangra 2016, SPD put on a performance that even had the judges giving them a standing ovation. You're like first-time coach of this team, right?
Yeah.
And you're on a placing streak. I want to ask you this question. When you saw the talent around your team, was your first reaction like, what's the next thing we can do? What's our next challenge? You know, when you saw MCB 2016, you probably talked to Gary about it. Gary was like, you know, I'd love to have you guys. That was the one that really put you on the map globally, internationally. Everyone started to recognize SPD name. What was the thought process? Because there was a big gap between Bhangra at the Falls and then MCB.
Yeah.
So what was the thought process going into that whatever 8-month gap, I believe, or 6-month gap, whatever that was? What was the thought process of the team, of you, of the preparation? What was going on there?
I think after Bhangra at the Falls, I personally realized that I don't get over with it. So by that I mean, we won at Windy City, even though it was with the second place, but it was still a winning thing, right? At Jakarta Bhangra we won first place. At Bhangra at the Falls we won first place, and even though we won the first place, we enjoyed, and I wanted to go right back into it. I wanted to go right back into competitions again, right? Any competition that would come and that would catch my eye, I would want to apply there, right? So I wasn't anywhere close to being satisfied, right? So MCB came across the lineup and we applied, and the mindset to go to Mochari Bhangra competition and that too, compete in the live category, it was different. It was very challenging. We needed a lot of funding. To have Naseeb Ustad over, have New Vardiyan and many things that went into it, like our band and all that, right? Because for live, I kind of believe it that if your set is 50%, right? Your dancers are 50% and your band is 50%. It's never gonna go to a point where your dancers are 75% and then the band is 25. It has to be equally strong, right? So. Yeah, a lot of funding was needed, and our guys decided that we're going to go there, right? Take our best bet and then do whatever we can and, put whatever we can put on stage.
So you talked about Ustad Naseeb.
Yeah.
Ustad Naseeb Ji, like, what was his impact?
Naseeb Ustad, Naseeb Ustad Ji was, still is the active toli of the Babu Man right now, and before that he was playing for Gurdas Man, right? So when we met here, he was here for like shows and all that, and I'm like, hey, I approached him, I'm like, hey, I heard you play Tola and I feel like you play from your heart, right? And he actually does play from his heart, so when we called him here, when he played for us, it was the energy was different. The energy was completely different in the academy. The one thing that I couldn't control though of Ustadji was that when he feels it, he wouldn't care about anything else, about speed, about whatever it is, right? He would just go right into it, right? If the crowd's, like going crazy, he would also go crazy, So things like that could happen, but other than that, he's an amazing totally man.
Yeah. And wait, so I think you were telling me a story where he kind of came in a little bit later on the prep for MCB. Is that true? Like he was, meaning like you had a different Doli and then there was another.
Yes, sir.
And then he actually came in.
Let me tell you about that one personality that I'm a fan of. So Ramandeep Rakada, right? He's a tall player. He also plays Tumbi. He's the one who played Tumbi at MCB, by the way, right? Okay. And he's the one who played Tumbi when I sang for Tag.
Okay.
Right? So he's a tall player as well. So I called him, I'm like, hey, man, we need help with practices. And this is what's going on. Like I told him, I never kept him in the dark. I told him, I'm like, hey, we would also approach Naseeb Ustad and see if his visa gets approved. He might come in too. But he has shows and all that. So if he comes in, he's only going to come in like 2 weeks before the competition. Right? So that ended up happening. He came in 2 weeks before the competition. But I appreciate Raman that helped us practice before Ustad came in. Right. So what happened during our practices? Sahaj Guhunia, so his job it was in the morning time, but then it shifted to evening time, so we couldn't practice in the evening time. So because of one guy, because of one person, we switched our timings from 9:30 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. So from that time frame to 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning. And trust me, the struggle was real. It would be snowing outside. It would be so cold outside. And Ramandeep, we're gonna show up. Of course, we're dancers. I'm mentally preparing them, physically preparing them as well. But for Ramandeep Rakra to show up at that time, and he would be the first one to show up at the academy, I really appreciate that guy. Like a huge shout out to him, man. And then 2 weeks before the competition, I'm telling him, like, hey, bro, the visa got approved. Or 3 weeks before the competition, I'm like, hey, the visa got approved. Ustad's gonna be coming in. So could I have you play Tumbi? Right? And the man's like, yeah, man, don't worry. You told me about it, so we're on the same page. I was a fan of that guy at that point, man. Yeah.
He was you need that person on your team. That person on your team is like one of the most valuable assets because they someone puts their team first. That's a great mentality.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now I think a little bit more about MCB specifically. The teams that you were competing against were Juwani Warriors, there and FCB. I think there was supposed to be a fourth team, but I don't think that happened. But
Yeah.
it was, FCB was their first time going live.
Yeah.
So they were really very, very new to the whole live scene. But
Yeah.
Juwanni Warriors was very experienced, right?
Yeah.
This is essentially Nachti Juwanni, right?
Yeah.
People who been doing Bhangra their entire life. Now, what were your expectations going to the comp, knowing you're going against such a talented team?
We definitely had to practice a lot, and that is why we practiced almost every day. Nasti Juwanni, of course, their name was out there, right? And for us to compete against them, and just like you said, for FCB, it was FCB's first time going live, right? It was also SPD's first time going live, right? And we knew exactly what we had to do, right? And I wouldn't say to win. I just wanted to say that, we knew exactly what we had to do to compete against, teams like FCB and Nasti Juwanni, right? And we put in many hours of practice. Approached people that have done live, approach them and then, invite them to our academy to check out our set and all that, so that we go in feeling 100%. And it worked out for us.
There was going into that competition, right? You perform.
Yeah.
Obviously, amazing performance. There's a time, though, that, the jumps were off.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, Staji...
Yeah, step into it. Step into it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go into there.
The only mistake Prabh Saini made you talk about it.
So there was the jumps were off, right?
Yeah.
Now I want to talk about more. I know we're gonna go into a little bit details of that, but not just that. Like when you're a leader, just think about it big perspective. When you're a leader and you make a mistake, there is a whole nother of level of impact, because the only person to hold you accountable is you. Sometimes, right? Is you, because you're in that leadership position. So kind of talk about that. What happened after? What was the reaction from the team? How did you feel? And then I remember there was a cool moment at the award ceremony that y'all did. But we can talk about all those pieces about it was a very small moment, but I think it's impactful in defining you as a leader.
Yes, thank you, Sahib. Let's talk about that. Every single time I watch that video on YouTube, I always skip through it. Or if there are guests over, I look away for that one moment, right? But anyways, so the Tol, Ustad played a role on stage that wasn't heard from us before, or by us before, right? When he played that, I don't know, for some reason I couldn't hear it. The crowd was going crazy as well because we were jumping and all that. I couldn't hear the Tol beat, and so... Who was behind me at that time? It was Stage Group, I think. Stage Group also couldn't hear that either, right? And we both went off beat, and then my guys, the energy. So the judges said that the energy that came into some guys on your team was amazing. Right after they noticed that you've gone off beat, right? And I think the reason to that was I asked Indiv Taliwal, one of my guys, Blue Jodi guys, right, from MCB. I asked him, hey, what happened? Because he was right behind me, but he didn't go off beat. He was in the center. He didn't go off beat. And the energy that he produced at that time was amazing. And I talked to him, hey, what happened there? What came into your mind? And he's like, hey, you've always emphasized on recovery. You've always talked about if you make a mistake, it's not about the mistake, then it's about the recovery. He's like, I just wanted to make sure that if that happened, I don't want that to be the reason of why we lose. He's like, I just wanted to put in everything I had at that point, and ending also started as well. So for me, it was like, I either die today or, or I take this moment from here to another level, right? So a lot of guys thought that way because I always tell them, I'm like, hey, it's all about the recovery. You have to recover properly, right? And as soon as you can. I did recover, but it still took me a second or two. And in the meantime, the team held it down. And my situation after that was really bad, Sahib. Let me tell you that. I went into this hallway, and then I was really pissed off that ended up happening. Right, I had a conversation with Toli. The Ustaji, and we talked, and I'm like, hey, what happened there? He's like, hey, I felt it, and it just came out, but it was all on beat and all that, and I just couldn't hear it. God knows it was because of the monitors or whatever, but I just couldn't hear it, and it was a bad moment. But the team ended up holding it up there, and then we still had
holding it down.
Yep.
Yeah. There was and then you ended up redoing the whole after you all had won, you
Yes.
ended up doing the
Yeah.
thing at the award ceremony.
At the award
redoing
ceremony,
that
I
whole
had
thing.
to do it. I told Saji, I'm like, hey, we had we were holding our hands. Like, I don't know if you looked at it, like the video still is up on YouTube, and we were all like holding hands. And when our name got announced, we went in there, and I just talked to Saji. I'm like, Saji, can we do the last segment here? And then we did it.
Okay, so now this is I think a kind of a paradigm shift is, did you feel, and I'm going to ask this, did you feel like you were the underdog before at all, ever? Like, did you feel like during this rise that you were an underdog at any time?
Not really.
Not really. So,
Yeah.
how would you define your team during this whole time? Did you say during 2015 all the way through to MCB, did you feel like the top dog at that time?
Saib, I just wanted to compete. I simply wanted the name to be out there. It was getting out there, but it wasn't all the way out there.
So for Fever and Big Ten, which happened in 2017, almost a year after MCB, so there's about a year gap between those two competitions. What was the goal with Fever and Big Ten? What were you trying to achieve? Because you've already been winning first places. So what was the new thing that you were trying to achieve?
At Fever, it was a whole new story, man. At Fever, we had this DJ that made our mix, and we wanted. There was a huge you have a smile on your face, see? So you know about that, right?
Yeah.
So
but not everybody knows.
So we had this online, behind the screen fight with these DJ guys, and one of these guys after Bhangra Fever is when he released the mix. He put it up online, and of course teams that were competing with us, they would listen to that mix, right? It's very obvious, right? They would listen to that mix, and then we had Bhangra Fever before Big Ten already, and the gap in between those two competitions was only 2 weeks, right? So people have now at this point after Bhangra Fever, people have already seen our performance, right? And I wanted to make some changes into our set, but that mix being released, it just completely forced us to put more time, right, and be more careful and bring so much attention to our practices and all that. But at Bhangra Fever, it was Goondeep's and Jasnoor, I think his name was. Yeah, Jasnoor's first competition, and I was very scared. I'm like, hey, these guys are new guys. I trained them and this and that, but I don't know what's gonna happen. It was Navdeep's first competition as well. The guy from NYPD, Navdeep Sidhu. Yeah. He's like, hey, I've been struggling to get a first place. I really want to get a first place and this and that. He was focused towards that, and I'm like, hey, bro, it's not about the placing here, but you're definitely going to be putting up a good performance. And now take this in, taking all those dreams, taking all those hopes, feelings, emotions, going to the competition and then realizing that on stage you can't even place your foot there properly and dance. It was so freaking slippery, right? That one.
We're talking about the Fever stage.
I'm talking about the Bhangra Fever stage. It's that one stage that I never want to step on again, right? I was talking to Jaspinder later on too. He had Bhangra Fever after that year, right? I'm like, hey, Jaspinder, we will come in, but you have to do something about that stage. I'm not stepping on that stage for sure. So before we stepped on that stage, for after tech time, we realized that the stage is way too slippery. So we tried putting Coke on our feet, like Coca-Cola on our feet, right? And tried stepping on stage before we performed. But then I realized right when the dust gets, like right when your foot catches the dust, like the sticky material catches the dust, it gets even more slippery, right?
It gets even worse.
It gets even worse, right? So we didn't go with that idea. We didn't go with that idea at all. And then we just went on stage, and I told my guys, I'm like, hey guys, we cannot slip and fall. We cannot do that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring our energies a little, just keep it normalized, keep it stabilized, so that we don't slip and have proper grip of the ground with your feet, right? And my guys did that, and nobody ended up falling, and we put up a great performance. We won first place, and that was every team's concern. Every team was concerned about the slippery stage. But we ended up winning first place. We were happy, but I knew for a fact that I was not happy after performing on that stage. I really wasn't. I felt like we practiced so much, and then we ended up putting up a performance that we ourselves not happy with, right? It left me with something. But then in 2 weeks I had Big Ten, and that is the reason why people feel like there was such a massive difference between showing ourselves off at Bhangra Fever and Big Ten. At Big Ten, the stage was ready for us. We changed our set. We were all heated up because of that whole DJ situation. He released our mix. And then after we released it, I had about like 8 days left. And then those 8 days, I changed 50% of the set. Right, trained my guys, took all that hate, took all that aggressiveness and, turned it into, energy, time, practices, and, put up a great performance at Big Ten. And Big Ten is by far one of my favorite performances.
Now that you're in this position where you're like a top dog, do you feel that your competitiveness, you're like what do you mean by damn?
Feels good to hear that.
I mean, like when you're like 2017, right?
Yeah.
Like you're going in, like I was like, okay, it's either FCB or SPD. Like that's who's gonna win.
Yeah.
Like no question about it. And I want to ask this question: what was the competitive nature of your team? Because from what I heard it was like, and I'm being fully transparent with you, that it was like you had a very cutthroat mentality to everyone at the comp, and you were like essentially like get out of our way. We're here gonna win. as rude as it sounds,
Come on. You've met me many times at gigs too in Detroit. Yeah. Like we go to Detroit so many times, right? You've met me so many.
Party, bro.
I know you've met me so many times, right? And that too, as a person that doesn't know me, that I don't know. How did you feel? Did you feel like I approached you like, as a person that didn't put a smile on his face and just?
So, do you feel like this is a question I ask? Do you feel like the people like apply an image to you? Like apply your like this like image of like cockiness or arrogance. Do you think people apply that image to you?
Okay.
Yeah.
Before I answer that, before I answer that question,
you
have to answer my question first, though.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So when we met in Detroit a few times, and you approached me every single time, what did you think of me?
I thought you were a fucking asshole. Like I hate this guy. No, I'm joking.
Fuck you. Fuck you too. Then end this fucking call right now.
No, dude. Honestly, when I first, I think we first met at I don't know where it was. Whatever. It was a while back. But I always felt that there was like a more of a. I thought we made a personable connection. I didn't make any assumptions.
Yeah.
If somebody were telling me you're an asshole, I didn't give a shit. I just that can be a good thing and a bad thing because sometimes there are times you should listen to other people. But I just go with my gut feeling and say, no, I'm gonna go with my own judgment.
Yeah, and I mean, at competitions, like so now back to your questions. Like when we go into competitions, right? If anybody is, people could be thinking, कि हाँ बंदा rude है ना? ये बंदे का attitude है. Now a lot of junior dancers or like teams that are trying to become this so-ever team that they look up to, right? A person might not even approach you thinking कि नहीं ये तो senior बंदे है तो ये इतना team है because they're competing with you, right? But on the other side, I'm okay with anybody approaching me just like you did, right? Every single time we met, you had the same questions like you're asking me today. कि तुसी इतना कितना कीता, this and that, how did you guys, change from this year to that year? You always had questions like that. I was always open to answering your questions, right?
In 2018, SPD competed at Bruin Bhangra. Throughout these past 3 or 4 years, SPD went to competitions that solely focused on the execution of proper Bhangra. Typically, these judging rubrics de-emphasize production value or sometimes what we call gimmicks in their sets. Bruin Bhangra is a competition that heavily emphasizes production value in the set, whether it be larger-than-life props or even using a projector in the back to enhance your performance. The memorability of Bruin Bhangra sets come from the production value. This was a new challenge for SPD to face, as no team from Canada never placed, let alone won Bruin Bhangra. SPD was here to change that. When we went, we're talking about Bruin 2018, this was probably the most different comp that you went to, obviously.
Yeah.
You have entertainment value.
Yeah.
What was the goal going to Bruin? What were you trying to prove?
Many dancers from my team, they wanted to go to Bruin. Yeah, but I never wanted to go to Bruin. Okay? Because of the way it's built, like the rubric and all that, right? Many gimmicks were seen in the past that had nothing to do with Bhangra whatsoever, but they were still appreciated and all that, right? So it wasn't like a folk and traditional Bhangra competition, and that's the one category that we were kind of exceeding in, right? We then finally decided that we were going to go to Bruin Bhangra, right? I don't know the organizer's name, but he approached me. What was his name again? Do you know, Saab? Guranch, there we go. Yep, Guranch, my man, right there. So Guranch is the guy that approached, and I talked to him, and I'm like, hey man, but gimmicks बहुत होंगे competition दे which we're planning on applying, right? So like, you know, if you could do something about the gimmicks and all that, I'm like, if it's given like, so see the thing is, if it's a Bhangra competition, you can't weight gimmicks 50% and then Bhangra 50%. If gimmicks are 5%, 10%, that's fine. Or even 15 that are, I mean, not 15, not 15. 5 or 10 is fine, right? But not more than that, right? Right? Then I'm going to be starting to think, am I applying to a Bhangra competition or something else? Or like a competition full of gimmicks, right? And there's just some Bhangra in there. So Grunch is like, yeah, man, don't worry. We'll take care of you guys and, we'll make some changes. No changes were made anytime soon and we had already applied, right? So koi major change nahi si kita gimmicks de vich bhi, koi major change nahi si kita rubric de vich bhi, but we still planned on, competing at that competition. So we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why I want to follow up on that question. When we went to 2019 Bruin, right? One of the things that the judges told us was that the rubric was not like the rubric in 2018.
Okay.
So yeah, but I'm hearing from you that the rubric was never changed. So was there really any modifications to the rubric?
The only modification that we asked for was in the gimmick section.
Okay.
Right. So, and right now, I don't even remember if it was made, if that change was made. But that was the only change that I asked Grunch to make, right? And he gave me different examples. He's like, if the team did this gimmick, it wasn't appreciated, or had nothing to do with Bhangra, then didn't get marked for it. So many things were brought up, and I don't know if there were any major changes made to the rubric section, but I remember calling it out, and I remember asking him for that little change, if he could make that. And I feel like if a team didn't place in 2019 because the rubric wasn't what it was in 2018, the only change that was made in 2018, if it was made, was to the rubric section. So did that team really come to the 2019 competition for Bhangra or for gimmicks? Right? Or did something else happen? So like that's my question. See, like I could really get in there and be like, even like I heard like teams were talking about how the rubric was changed in 2018, right? For our performance. If it was changed for the betterment of Bhangra. I don't even know if that's a word, but anyways, it was going to add on to Bhangra. All right? So I mean, teams really need to get their stuff straight.
When there's a conversation of you shouldn't have won Bruin 2018.
Get that?
How do you react to you shouldn't have won Bruin 2018? How would you react to someone saying that? That you shouldn't have placed at that competition, or you should have not got first place. It's a tough question. People have said that to me before, and I've gotten pissed off. I've gotten upset. I want to hear your reaction.
There was this one guy that said to one of these other dancers that also competed at the competition, but he came to me later on. He's like, "Oh, Paji, the other guy said that. Oh, I could do 50 jumps at the end after the performance. What was the big deal about that? All right, I could do 50 jumps. Right? What was the big deal about that, man? Right? They took a break after their performance was done. Right? Now, then you could do anything, right? You could do anything then. If you could do 50 jumps at the end of your performance, after the performance was done, after taking a 30-second break or a 5-second break or a 10-second break, you could have done anything. See, the people that place second or third or even fourth or even like, God knows where, they're always going to have problems with the teams that would play it first. Right now, someone came up to me and they're like, even though I've heard people say he could be an asshole or he is an asshole, who do you think these people are? These people are the people that have never seen me, that have never met me, that portray an image of me from far behind, from sitting behind the screen or from just watching me from far away, all right? Or that have lost to me in the past, all right? I'm not a good person to them. You hardly find those personalities that carry amazing personality traits, that want to learn, that want to come to you later on. For example, you, Saab, right? That would come to people that they want to learn from, that they want to take something from in a positive note, all right? Others are just there to point fingers, man.
Well, the kind of question I want to ask was, this one is specific because I actually kind of remember seeing this personally.
Okay.
When I've been witnessing it personally, was I know a lot of the dancers, and we even talked about this, like that the Bruin performance had a lot of mistakes in it, right? In terms of like, someone's like Kunda got caught on something, sup lock, maybe a mistake here and there. and I know that you a lot of the dancers were upset because you hold them to a high standard.
Yeah.
How did you approach it as a leader? Like, how did you handle that situation? Especially given the amount of time and money you've put into Bruin.
All right. So after the performance, I was the last one to come to where we were all getting dressed up and all that before the competition, before the performance, I mean. So when I walked in there, there were two guys that were not a part of that group. Okay. They were scared, whatever the case was. And when I was talking to them, most of them were crying. Most of them. Right? And I've never seen them cry like that before. Right? They knew exactly what they've done. They knew that they've disappointed me. There was this one guy. I'm not gonna tell you his name. He's not a part of our team. Not for that reason, but he's just not a part of the team. He had his fumman get stuck. Okay. Mm-hmm. So whenever I coach, whenever I'm practicing with my team, I always put a lot of importance. Like I give a lot of importance to recovering, like the recovery process of a mistake. Right. So this man, he couldn't recover. He just could. So tell me, if your fumman are stuck and the lights turn off on stage, would you not put everything in it to like just get rid of it? And he tried it as well. He tried to get rid of it, but apparently it came off later on in the performance. So like, yeah, we had many mistakes like that. I mean, Navdeep's shikha, it got stuck with the fumman. He dropped it right away, right? So I had conversations with them that, hey guys, this is how you could have approached the situation, right? This is what you could have done instead, right? But on stage, kade nahi lagda pata, you know. It's tahi kehande hai ki when you step on stage, it's a completely different experience, and you have to make sure that you are well prepared so that you're not thinking about what's the next move. It should be in the muscle memory, right? But if you end up making a mistake, your only focus should be towards recovering properly, right? So even though we made a lot of mistakes, I did have this conversation with my team later on, and they were broken, they were heartbroken, but I guess there were many good things towards, just like MCB. The judges said, "Jedi galti hui si munde to shala wali." They're like, "Oh, galti na de barabar hai," because rest of your set, like the way you choreographed it, the way segments fell in, and the energy that was produced on stage, the bondings that was there, the bonding that was clearly visible by the judges, by the audience, it took over. It took over that mistake.
After taking over the North American Bhangra circuit, where would SPD go next? Seems obvious, right? Go back to the roots of Bhangra. Go to India. SPD took their talents to India and to Bhangra Arena 2019. A little bit of background, Bhangra Arena is a yearly competition that both live and music Bhangra teams across India compete at. It's the closest thing in India to a North American Bhangra competition in terms of the structure and how it's run. SPD went to Bhangra Arena to compete in the live Bhangra category, which is a very daring feat. So, would Prabh and SPD be able to topple this challenge like they did with the rest of the challenges they faced over the past 5 years? But keeping it to, SPD comps, I think there was another year gap like we were talking about before.
Yeah.
And now that year gap goes into Bhangra Arena 2019.
Yeah.
Okay. How is this one different from MCB in terms of preparation? That's the first question, because this is your second live comp. So how's the comp preparation different for this one?
So when it comes to Bhangra Arena, I judged Bhangra Arena in 2018, right? So
Yep.
I had seen that world's best live teams come to that competition, right? Mm-hmm. Or they're in Punjab and they would be competing at the competition in the future as well. So going to 2019, I was appointed as a judge again, but then I changed my mind. I said I will be going there, bringing my team there, right, to compete, right? Because we never said no to challenges. We never said no to lineups that has strong teams. I'm sure you can tag along on that. Any competition that we went to, it had amazing teams. It had teams that worked for their name, that made their name. We went against them. So when we decided to go to Bhangra Arena, the approach was completely different. Practices were there every day. One thing that I don't recommend is practicing every day. Give yourself, your body needs resting as well. And if you don't want to be injured, just do not practice every day, but still do it 5 days in a week. But we practiced every day for Bhangra Arena. The energy was amazing, so much stamina. for 4 months back to back. You know, we practiced in our academy as well. We also booked other auditoriums just to see how it would feel on a wooden floor, you know, instead of mats. You know, had drones come in, you know, take our, you know, make a video of us from the top, you know, just to see how we would look, to see like little things here and there, like the lines that would go off, the guys that would not face the direction that I'm telling them to face, lifting, smiles, expressions, like nice videos that would tell us about our mistakes, right? So we put in a lot of effort and time into this, man, to go into the competition that we wanted to compete in.
One of the things that one of the big things was that you're now going to India and competing, which is a huge difference, especially monetarily.
Yeah.
Talk about some of the hurdles of competing in India. When I think about the monetary stuff, I think that's like a big hurdle.
Yeah.
Because I know that other people in the Bhangra community have had this idea of going to India, and I think it's great because it helps us connect our, you know, the world, the Bhangra world together.
Yeah.
So what were some of the hurdles that you had to overcome when you were competing in India?
The biggest one was funding. The second one was communication. Right?
Communication.
Yeah.
Okay.
When it came to funding, of course, like chalo, wo to saade haath de vich sigi, right? It was in our hands. So we were gonna make sure if we are, you know, if we're financially good to go to India and compete there. We weren't, but we made it work. So anyways, we're in India now, and then the arrangements that were made by the committee, they expected us to sleep in. So we were 16. They expected us, all of us, like 16, including you know, girls and our parents. They expected us to sleep in like 2 rooms, you know, and like it was very bad. Like when we got there, was the arrangements were not good. We had to I had to be out all night looking for hotels, you know, and then staying in a hotel that was out of our budget, but that could meet our expectations, you know, that could meet our standards. It was just a nice, like a clean bed sheet and not a sheet full of shit, you know, like, or a stain mark, you know, all that. So we finally got a hotel. We stayed in there, and then, I mean, these were some things that we were planning on before the competition, right? When we were here in Canada, that we're gonna go there and we're not gonna struggle in these things. We're gonna be stabilized in that category right there when it comes to like booking hotels, sleeping at night, and all that, right? But because we already had our band that was from India and we had to practice with them, so we had booked a school's auditorium. Yeah, we booked a school's auditorium, and that's where we arranged a whole, like, a better sound system than we were provided with at the competition. So let me tell you this. We had a better sound system for practices in India than at the competition, right? So we had to, like, arrange practices there. The drive was 45 minutes. We would drive 45 minutes, get taxis, and, you know, drive to that school every day, practice there. And we had about, 4 to 5 practices in 3 days before the competition, 3 to 4 days before the competition. And yeah, the hurdles were there, but we are proud of what we put on stage, and I think that's what that matters.
This was, and I know, like, we're going to talk about this. We talked about it last time, but this was like your first time losing after a long time.
After a long time, yes.
After a very long time, your first time losing.
Yeah.
We all saw the videos that happened afterwards.
Yeah.
Right? The whole thing. And I think that we hear from different stories, but you're on this podcast now.
Yeah.
We hear from different perspectives.
Yeah.
You're on this podcast now, and want to kind of talk about, from your perspective, what ended up happening at that moment when, right before the placings were announced for Arena.
Okay.
So, what was going on?
Yeah.
From your eyes?
Yeah. So, you know, a lot of people have already seen our video, and they have seen that there was a Jhumar segment in our Bhangra performance, just like there is in every other Bhangra performance. But in our Jhumar segment, there was something called Tamasha. Now, Tamasha is a part of Jhumar. Like, if you watch the long Jhumar performances for like 10 minutes, like the only Jhumar performances, the performances that are only dedicated to Jhumar, right? You would see Tamasha segments. So we wanted to incorporate Tamasha into our Bhangra performance, and, you know, bring that idea out, and, you know, would want more teams to follow that, because of course it puts a lot more attention, and it brings a lot more attention towards the Bhangra performances overall, right? So wanted to do that. We talked to the judges about it. We talked to Pratipal Singh Palla, and hoping कि Pratipal Singh Palla would talk to that one judge that was not announced until the end of the competition, until the day of the competition, right? The surprise. Okay. We call it a surprise judge. So, you know, he didn't know about it, but all the other judges knew about it, that we were going to have that. Pratipal Singh Palla, we have recordings actually. So if you would want to post recordings on your podcast about this whole thing, we could also send you recordings.
That'd be great.
Right?
Send it over.
Yeah. So, and then thinking that this judge is saying, ki, this is a part of Chumar. This is a part of the dance anyway, so there's no problem. So our second question to the judge was, hey, we have a sarangi. There is a sarangi that is a folk saj. It's a folk saj. It's a folk instrument that we would like to use in our performance. He's like, it's a folk saj, ya? Inu karo use. Right? So he had no problems with it whatsoever. Like the answers that we got that were very confident. Like, these are okay. But I know for a fact that it has not been done before in India. Right? I performed in India, I've competed in India, and I know like what the rules tell there. There are rules in India, right? So I talked to the organizer of the competition. I'm like, hey bro, you know, there are rules that are in India, but in your competitions you're telling me I can bring as many instrumentalists as I want. Like I can bring as many saji as I want, right? So he's like, yeah man, this is a competition. And he's like, this is a competition in Delhi. This is not a competition taking place in Punjab. So we make our own rules, and in our rubric here, you can bring as many people as you want in your band. You can bring as many members as you want. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. So we had sarangi, we had tumbi, we had flute as well, right? In Tumor segment, I had this one guy that was gonna switch from playing tumbi. No, that was gonna switch from playing, I think, one of the instruments to playing flute as well, just to like add on to the Tumor segment, right? So we took advantages. We took advantage of having no rules, no limitations there, right? Mm-hmm. But you know, after we performed, before they announced the results, before like they said anything, they started talking about this surprise judge, the last minute judge that was called on. His name is Kak, right? He went on stage and he's like, hey, aidhan ta ho hi nahi sakda. How can a team bring a tamasha inside of Chumar? Aidhan nahi ho sakda, right? Aidhan kade pehla hoya hi nahi ke, you know, we always have 4 saji, so 4 band members, right? Maximum 5, but we can never have 8 band members. How is that even possible? So he started saying all of that stuff, and right when we heard it, the first person to talk from our team was our band coach, Harnam Singh Sandhu Baji, right? He couldn't take it because the call was made from his phone, right? And he's the one who recorded the call, right? And we had the recordings of it. I have heard the recording of it too, right? So the recording suni si gya, we were sure we can just, you know, upload the recording and all that, right? So even though we talked to the judges about it, now imagine me talking to you about it, you've given me a very confident answer, right? Right? But on the other side, Anil goes on stage tomorrow and tells Kibi, how can that even happen? So whose fault is it? Right? That's my question to the audience. Whose fault is it? Right? It's not the team's fault that has put like freaking $40,000 in coming into a competition that didn't even treat them nicely. You know, and by nice treatment, I don't want to be sade mure tusi full bichha do, sade galan chhar pa do, right? All I wanted was proper communication and the honest right answers. Answers. And why was I asking? Because I didn't want anything like that to happen on stage. So we didn't care if we even placed or not at that competition. Why? Because we were being disrespected on stage, right? He was trying to tell people something that we already confirmed with the other 4 judges.
Was this the audio, just confirming, was this like when there's a video that's kind of like from a top view angle that's like pointing down right towards the front of stage? Was that the judge who was like talking and then someone, I don't know who came up to the stage first? Is that the person who you're talking about who went and kind of said all these things at the...
Yeah, he was wearing like a baby pink bug and a baby pink kameej.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. Yeah. And so like essentially, and then the kind of the reaction that happened to that was pretty crazy.
Yeah. So we started, pretty crazy. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, like, was there any like? So I mean, like, what ended up happening after that? From what I saw was, you know, you guys were really upset. You went like on Instagram or something like that. You started posting on your story, like, there are obviously other people posting on their stories and whatever and all that stuff. And I remember getting like a text being like, yo, like, dude, like you need to go see what's going on.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit, like, you know, like, oh, is the SPD video live? I was like, oh, the video's live. I want to like check out the video. I think that's what they were talking. I thought that's what they were talking about, but then I saw everything else. Were there any things that you, in that whole moment, like out of all of that, were there any points that you regretted? Anything that you did?
It happened in the moment. Right? Now, there are situations that you just can't handle, right? If someone's saying something that you can't not hear or cannot take from anyone, in the moment you would react differently. Versus, what if you get like 5-10 minutes to think about it, right? And you won't react that way. But because we were... It's humanity. Like, we're all humans, man. You know, we can only, you know, tolerate certain things, right? There were people in the auditorium, you know, and when he pointed some things out, and we knew that you know, that there is a lack of communication in between the judges, right? You know, we had to call him out. All we started saying was, the judge right beside you, we confirmed it with him. Why isn't he stopping you? Or why didn't he stop you? Why isn't he coming up and saying anything? Right? I called out Hardeep Singh Sahota as well. Right? The judge that I confirmed with. And he, you know, he's you know, we're good friends, right? I'm the one who, you know, gave him that spot that, you know, he's going to judge at the competition. Right? Bhangra and Hardeep Sahota, they didn't know each other. Right? If just me knew Hardeep Singh Sahota, it was just like a friend, and I was given that spot as a judge. Right? And so Hardeep Singh Sahota was not on the board, right? So when I stepped down, I'm like, you know what? There's another person, because they wanted a judge from Canada. So I'm like, hey, this is another person, right? They can look into, right? So when I confirmed things with Hardeep Singh Sahota, he didn't come up on stage and supported that. Yes, this team has taken the time out to you know, communicate with us, and this is what has happened, right? But anyways, you know, Hardeep and I are good now. And I mean, it is something that has left a huge mark on my mind, on my soul, right, on my heart when it comes to Bhangra. But things happen, right? But we just didn't expect it, that it would go down that way, right? Especially from our judges, of course, but the Indian judges, it was expected. But that's why we made efforts. You know, that's why we made phone calls. That's why we communicated with them to ask them, hey, do you have any problems with these things that we're trying to incorporate in our performances? And they're like, no, man, we have no problems whatsoever. But when they did, it was too late, right? And after that, I mean, yeah, we had to come live. One thing that I want to tell you though, there's a video on YouTube as well. Anybody that was in the auditorium, they were supporting us. You know, we had gotten so much support, so much love from people from all over the world. It was overwhelming. I was blessed. I was happy that we were getting so much support. And I had to tell people that this is what happened. This is our take towards it. And do I regret it? Yes, I do. Sahib, if you want to hear that, yes, I do. You know, nobody wants to get out of their character and do something like that, like point fingers, you know, and get angry, you know, and just lose their voice, you know. But we were honest, and we just wanted to tell people that this is our take. Like, we have taken steps prior to the performance to make sure that this lack of communication does not take place, but it still did. Like, we still got hunted down, you know, and guess who's going to pay for the loss? Nobody else but we, right? And if we lost in any other way, like, कि भी जो साडी performance इदा हुंदा गलती हुंदी साडी performance गलतियां सीगियां, and I want to say it right here that there were mistakes in our performance. There were things that I would like to change for the coming performances that I would never do again. There are decisions that I'm gonna make that will, of course, add on to our performances from now on, right? But the way it happened, that wasn't the right way. That is not the way I expected I would lose ever. Yeah. Right? And I hope any team that ever performances, any team that loves Bhangra, any team that goes live or thinks about going live in Canada or India, I hope something like that never happens to them.
It's a feeling of, like, you know, you're okay if someone, like, we talk about this, we're okay if someone beats us in an area we can't control. Like, we can't control if someone is, to a certain degree, like, how creative a team is going to be compared to us. That's sometimes out of our control. Yeah. But when it comes to cleaning and execution, if we lose in that area, that's all us, and we feel it. Like we feel that accountability, and you feel like you lost for the wrong reasons, and that's like those losses hurt more than anything.
Yep.
And I get what you're saying. You said something like we were hunted down. What did you mean by that?
Hunted down as in like the judge that went on stage.
Yeah.
He hunted us down for the things that we brought up on stage, but they were already.
Gotcha.
We already talked to the judges about it.
You were like singled out. You were targeted.
Like we were targeted.
Yeah. Like instead of talking about how good other performances were over you, they just put you more and more down.
Yeah.
Right. Kind of like they came to the approach like we knew we weren't necessarily saying the right thing, but we need to validate ourselves.
Yeah.
That's I can kind of see that perspective. Yeah. The other piece I wanted to say was I'm forgetting the question now, but it was something about the that judge. Is it normal in India for the judges before they announce the placings to validate why they do a certain set of placings?
Some judges do, and apparently that judge always does.
Always does.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I heard.
Yeah.
That's what I heard. Yeah. Were you ready for that at all? Or did you know he was going to do that?
No, I wasn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't. So mostly he goes up on stage and he says a few things about like vardiyan ke, back in the days, Bhangra dancers used to wear, phate kurte, like tiered up kurte, tiered up chadre, ripped by, tiered up, ripped. Ripped chadre, ripped kurte, right? But how come dancers these days have so much bling on their freaking jackets and vests and kurte and pagga and chadre? So we had a problem with that, right? I think it's very important for anybody to know that if anybody, so now for example, let me give you an example. Now Naseeb Ustad, the toll player that played for us, he has been out of the Bhangra circuit for about 15-20 years now, maybe more, right? Now the judge that was judging, he has been, did you see their performance when they performed at Bhangra Arena?
Who?
The judges, the Indian judges.
No, I haven't seen that.
Oh God, all right. Pammi Bai, when Pammi Bai performs, you can look at him performing and you can tell, yaar, he knows Bhangra.
Yeah.
When the other judges performed, man, it was a disaster. I'm not gonna say that they were drunk, but it looked like they were drunk. All right, it appeared that they were drunk. Right, like if someone has been out of the Bhangra circuit for about 15-20 years, man, don't let that person judge. Check out their background. Right, check out check out their background. Things have changed over time. Bhangra dancers now on stages do not wear ripped kurte, ripped chadre, ripped pagga. Punjabis have done an amazing job worldwide, in putting themselves out there on the map, and it's time to realize that I'm against a lot of bling on vests and kurte as well, but some kadai, normal kadai that looks nice, like our vardi was appreciated by Indian teams. Every team that competed there, before we were dressing up, almost every team came up to us and they're like, yo, tuadi vardiyan bahut pasand ne, tonu sanu bahut vadiya lagiyan. And that judge that was talking about vardiyan, he wasn't even talking about our vardi. He was talking about a different team's vardi. But I'm just saying that, it's time that we realize that Bhangra dancers are not going to come up on stage and dance with ripped up clothes.
Yeah, why would you do that? You're presenting yourself. Why would you present yourself in like a and you're not prepared.
Yeah.
Now there was another year break happened, and we went into Ground Shaker Bhangra 2020.
Yes, sir.
That was obviously canceled because of COVID. And
7 days
it was
before.
a live
7 days before.
7 days before comp. So did you have your set completely prepared?
All good.
You two were about to. I know you weren't gonna. Yeah, because Anna was gonna be there with Fodge and competing in the music category.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so you guys were you prepared completely 100%? Like had the whole set
100%.
done? That sucks.
Yeah, band
Alright,
in,
so
dancers
but the
in,
thing is,
everything was in.
And how was that? If you could give us a preview of what that was going to look like, because we never, for us to like imagine what the performance was going to be like. What was it going to be like?
That was going to be.
It's going to be arena.
That was going to be an
like?
eye opener for people that are on the other side that think that nothing bad happened at Bhangra Arena, right? I'm sure there's nobody that thinks that way. Everyone thinks that SPD, communication should have been better, right? The judges should have given them the right answers. But at Ground Shaker, of course, like I didn't leave any room for communication. I also didn't take any risks. I was not going to take any risks. I was not going to do anything new. But, of course, a new set, right? A different approach with just the lessons that I learned from the previous competition. All of that was going to be part of it. And people were going to see an amazing, amazing performance. That's all I could tell you, man.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Bhangra Podcast. Be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please help us out by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts and Podchaser, as that really helps others find the podcast. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all of them at the Bhangra Pod. If you want to know what else is going on in the podcast world, sign up for our newsletter and join our Discord server to get exclusive content you won't get anywhere else. There will be links to all of those in the show notes. Thank you for listening to